So, it's no secret to many of you watching this video that I have been playing the library of Ruina lately. It's even less of a secret to the same aforementioned people that I am quite thrilled with the game so far and have quite a bit of emotional investment into the game. And if you're somebody right now that has just now heard of these facts coming from my mouth, then, well, hello. Welcome to my own personal escape from reality. Pull up a chair, grab your favorite drink, and let's talk about my first impression after 4 hours of playing the library of Ruina, shall we? First things first, if there's anybody out there for whatever reason that doesn't know, the Library of Ruina is a sequel, meaning that there is a prequel, meaning that you're probably going to be pretty fucking lost playing this game if you have never heard of the Lobotomy Corporation game that came before it. If you did play the prequel game, then it doesn't necessarily mean that you will understand the story perfectly, but it does mean that you're missing out on a huge chunk of the experience if you don't have that game under your belt. Alright, good. Glad we cleared that up. Look, this is a video about the Library of Ruina, not Lobotomy Corporation, so I'll be trying my damnedest not to talk about the latter unless it's a necessity for the topic. So, anyway, moving on. What do I think about the Library of Ruina? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it somewhere in between? What should you expect playing the game, and how much content is there, etc., etc., etc.? To start, I think the Library of Ruina is a magnificent step up from the previous installment. The way I've been wording it to everybody is that it feels very gamey, and by that I mean it's very clear that you're playing a game, even though Project Moon takes its narrative very seriously. The game gives you goals to reach and doesn't really waste your time pointlessly. I hope you understand that joke that I made just now, because I'll have to explain it a little bit later, but in short, it's been a solid experience up to this point, early access or not. So this being said, how is this game decent so far? What makes it feel so gamey, as you so eloquently put it? Well, relax and listen, goddammit, I'm getting there. Anyway, before I can explain why this game gives me such a throbbing joy boner, let's talk about the actual content of the game first. So, there are 3 basic gameplay aspects to the Library of Ruina. First is the visual novel part, which is almost fully voiced in Korean, by the way.
뭐가 됐든 간에 결국 난 여기에 갇혀서 무언가를 착취당해야 하는 거지?
그래. 너를 살려두는 이유는 2가지야.
I personally wish that it had an English voiceover so I didn't have to read the dialogue, but the game is made by a fucking Korean game company, so I'd be a total asshole to take points off for it. And in an unrelated topic, if anybody is looking for people to do a fan-made voiceover for a Steam mod or something, then sign me the fuck up. Moving on, we have the invitation part of gameplay, and for consistency's sake, I'm going to refer to anything not involving the actual combat in the game or the visual novel part as the invitation system, quote-unquote. So this means I'm literally putting any menu navigation after you load or start a new game into this part. Now, just like a lot of things in this game, inviting guests to the library seems super convoluted at first, until you understand the mechanics, then it's just ridiculously fucking streamlined. In summary, the invitations work sort of like a hub to initiate a combat scenario. In order to progress the game, you need to invite a guest by choosing a book from your collection. This will invite a specific set of guests depending on the book that was used. And how exactly do you obtain these books, do you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked, you little shit. Alright, let's get to the good part, which is combat itself, also known as reception. The gist of combat is that it works extremely similar to that of a tabletop game if you also include cards into the mixture of dice throwing. There's a health and a stagger bar for each unit, and once their health reaches 0, they obviously die. And once the stagger hits 0, then the character misses out on a turn, making them vulnerable. Receptions play out on round-based combat, where each unit has a speed dice roll that gives the player more control over the characters that your enemy targets, assuming that you get a higher dice roll than them, that is. After the speed dice roll, each unit has a combat card that they play with a certain cost to it, known as light. Your light regenerates naturally each round or in certain specific circumstances, like after a defense roll from one of your combat cards. And when 2 units clash, the resulting values of each dice roll will dictate the results. Play will continue like this until one side loses all of their units, and each enemy that you defeat will reward you with their book. Now, here's the part where I'm going to talk about equipment in the game. So, each one of these books that you obtain rewards pages, which kind of work like armor and modify the stats of the unit that you equip them to. These book pages will level up as they are used in combat, or if you sacrifice your excess book pages that you obtain. There are also augments that each page can obtain as you use them more and more, as well as battle symbols for each unit, which you obtain by fulfilling certain objectives that are similar to achievements during specific battles with said unit. Now, how the hell do these gameplay mechanics mesh together cohesively for the Library of Ruina? Well, let's talk about it. The entire point of the Library of Ruina is that you are a, librarian, under the employment of a mysterious blue-haired woman named Angela. Your job is to invite people to the library where they will participate in a reception to earn a valuable book of knowledge. There is a catch, though. If the guests lose the reception, then they will be turned into a book themselves. And make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, the reception is nothing more than a bloody battlefield, teeming with the smell of sweat, pennies, and moral ambiguity. If you become invested in the plot in any way, shape, or form, then you will likely question many times why exactly your purpose is just to kill people who enter the library. And on an even more interesting note, why the characters in the game world seem to just be okay with everything that happens. While the main character Roland definitely questions Angela multiple times, the fact of the matter is he still just goes along with it and seems generally unfazed by the library itself or the things that are going on. As if this is just something that happens in this game's universe on a daily basis, which is honestly pretty intriguing. This right here is one of the strongest things about both Lobotomy Corporation and the Library of Ruina. Project Moon is pretty good at providing subtleties in world building that invoke curiosity. You truly want to learn more about the world that these games reside in, and why they are so fucked up beyond all recognition. It feels so alien, but at the same exact time the characters sort of just roll with it. To them, they're just surviving. This is normal to them. And by extension, it kind of makes you feel like the alien instead. Now, I know this got a little philosophical there, but this is a big reasoning why these games intrigue me so much. That is, personally, as an individual, this is far from an objective point. So let's get back on point here, people. So now that everybody in the room is caught up, whether or not that you have played Lobotomy Corporation, the Library of Ruina, or neither, we're all on the same page. Yes? Good. Okay. So what do I feel about the game, and why the hell was it necessary to spend so much fucking time talking about the mechanics that 90% of people watching this will already know about? Well, simply put, if I'm going to be talking about a game for 20 minutes, I want to actually contribute something informative to the subject. Fangasming over the game is a fantastic waste of time. At least it is for me. Plus, this video could be the one that somebody clicks on in the future to learn more about the game that we're all very passionate about. So back to my original thesis of the video, this game is a magnificent step up from the last. For one, I'm a little biased here because tabletop games and RPG games are just always something I nerd out over due to my background. It's just something that me and my old man have always nerded the fuck out over. And besides, let's just be honest, guys, it's a tabletop game, at least on a base level. If you were to data mine this, you could literally turn it into a fucking tabletop RPG. But let's continue. So, for my initial standing point, it's very clear that this game has more of a budget behind it. Starting right from the get-go with the voice acting, which is pretty solid-sounding voice acting, mind you, the game starts off with a bang. Really, your generic male anime protagonist just wakes up in a strange library where a mysterious woman literally crushes his fucking arms and legs in an interrogation practice. And then the next time Roland wakes up, he's just perfectly fine. His limbs work, he's walking, he can use his hands. There's not a scratch on him. And now you're just working for this psychopath. Lovely. And then suddenly, wow! Random dancing. The game throws a fucking musical number at you from literally out of nowhere. My first video had a copyright claim on it, so you know that the song is legit. Ironically, by the way, guys, the song is called String Theocracy by Millie, and the artist Millie also did the song Execution, which is the song that originally made me play Lobotomy Corporation in the first place. Small world, isn't it? Anyway, my point is that the game starts out pretty strong. It doesn't heat up after 15 hours of gameplay. The game just comes straight out the gates, ready to raw dog you with a branding iron, so yeah. Don't misinterpret my wording, though. The game is surprisingly chill with the gameplay aspect, however. You have plenty of time to think about what you want to do in combat because it's turn-based. A byproduct of the imposing-ass introduction to the game is where my second point lies, actually. The game is very immersive. Now, understand that immersion depends entirely on the individual, even though there is objectivity to be found within it. I'm literally writing a script out right now about this same concept in another video series as we speak to better explain this point, but for now you're just going to have to trust me. Immersive storytelling doesn't mean shit if the individual in question simply is not invested in the storyline, but there are still elements of storytelling that do add a backbone to the level of immersion. The Library of Ruina makes you ask a lot of questions. Why is Angela so defensive of the library? How exactly did she crush Roland's arms and legs with minimal effort in the first place? Who exactly is Roland? How the hell did he get here? This is called world building, my friends. It's something that a lot of games sorely tend to lack these days. It's also something that's a bit of a strength of Project Moon that they have in their games, even though some of their story tends to get lost in translation. Between the new voice acting, the cutscenes, the general structure of the game, and the audio and music selection, you have a lot of elements that complement immersion. By the way, side fucking idea right there that I was thinking of, the music is phenomenal in this game. Point number 3, the game is fun to play. Seriously though, in the prequel I had a serious issue with how big of a factor that random number generation plays on your runs, especially later in the game. But Silent, you said that the gameplay is almost entirely about dice rolls, so how the hell is this game any better? Well, that's really simple. The entire game is actually designed around the random number generation this time. Why do you guys think that roguelike games get such high praise even though most of your success in a roguelike is dictated by random chances? Honestly, question yourself this. Sure, there's a level of skill, but all the skill in the world isn't going to help you if your numbers are objectively smaller than your enemy, and that's just a fact. The answer to my question, by the way, is that roguelike games are designed around this concept. Runs are usually pretty fast, and most roguelikes that I've played have some kind of continuity between runs. In other words, even if you fail 47 times in a row, whether or not that it had anything to do with your shitty luck, you're still accomplishing something. Roguelike games almost always feel satisfying to play because of this concept. This is more what I mean when I say that the game is fun, since fun is obviously a subjective term. The combat is very reactive to what you do. It's flashy and cinematic. Your actions have a real impact on your enemies. They get damaged and it stays on them the whole entire time with the bloodstains. And even when you fail a clash by getting an unlucky roll, it's not the end of the world, since the game isn't super punishing about it. So what? You took a few extra points of damage. Big whoop. To repeat an earlier phrase, it feels like you're playing a fucking video game. It feels gamey. Also, it's generally accepted by the community that this game isn't as difficult as Lobotomy Corporation, so there's that. Now for some shorter paragraphs for the next 2 points, because I know for a fact that this video is dragging on for a while. One thing I love about the game is how beautifully this shit runs. It's clean as hell as opposed to Lobotomy Corporation, whose frame rate dragged its ass on the carpet the moment that you made it halfway through the game. Obviously, there's less going on in-game, so it's going to make the game run better. Next point. Finally, we wrap up the good shit by saying that this game has lots of potential. If you're still oblivious to it, the Library of Ruina is an early access game. They are still adding content as we speak and regularly changing the way that the game works while listening to player feedback. This is unfortunately a double-edged sword, though, as we all know that early access games always have to be. Now it's time for me to be the bad guy and talk about why this is a poopy bad thing. For one, the Library of Ruina is a $25 early access title. I can 100% see why this price tag would seem a bit steep for somebody outside of the fandom. Plus, the story content stops after 3 chapters, which doesn't seem like much to work with at the moment. I have no idea how much content this truly is in the game because, like I said, I've only played the game for 4 hours, but the fact still stands that all the cons are present with a regular early access game title that would apply to this game. Things are constantly getting tweaked and changed, and sometimes it's going to mean that you're going to lose your story progress. Although, I hear you'll always keep your equipment, so that is a plus. So if you're interested, then don't say I didn't warn you. Now let's finally address that fucking tutorial that I made a joke alluding to earlier. I'm unsure if this is just something, again, lost in translation or not, but the tutorial is very overwhelming. First off, there's too much shit. Way too much shit that is thrown at you all at once. The tutorial isn't exactly misleading or inaccurate, but like I said, it kinda just throws a lot at you at once, and at least for me, it was difficult to digest. It's hard to discern which information is important and which information is, well, just obvious. For example, in my Let's Play, I missed one single sentence in the tutorial that prevented me from commanding Roland to actually defend himself, which is what the spacebar rolls do, basically. You hit the spacebar and it rolls your speed dice. After that, you pick a combat card and a target, and keep in mind that the top of the screen sort of draws your attention the entire time as well. It's clearly a button of some sort that blinks yellow, so I thought that you needed to press it in order to do things, and I was dead wrong. To give credit where credit is due, they were at least smart enough to make the game guide available at all times, so you always have a reference for information. But again, going back to the whole tabletop games thing, it just feels like your first time playing D&D, doesn't it? You have all of the core rulebooks just sitting right next to you in case you need them, but without any familiarity or knowing what information is relevant or important, it can still cause confusion. The only other con that I feel is really worth placing in this video is that I had an issue with some of the text in some of the cutscenes. The game does this weird text wrapping thing where the first line or two scrolls out perfectly fine, but then it gets down to the last line of the sentence and it keeps widening the text box to fit all of it and word wraps as it runs out of space. Now, I'm not exactly what I would call a fast reader compared to other people, but even still, I find myself reading much faster than the text speed in this game, which makes reading the dialogue a fucking chore when it keeps realigning the text on top of it. Furthermore, the voice acting tends to wrap up much quicker than the text scrolling, so my suggestion would just be to add a ability in the options menu to increase the text scrolling speed. This is a pretty common feature that you find in most visual novels, and I think it would go a long way. And yeah, we're done. Alright, cool. Final paragraph of my script, right here, where I'm supposed to just wrap up the video entirely. Like I said, I love the game so far. I'm only about 4 hours in, so eventually the novelty is going to die out, but I think it's going to last a bit longer in terms of my general enjoyment. The game holds a pretty solid level of story immersion on top of gameplay that stands up on its own. If the Library of Ruina didn't have a storyline to it whatsoever, it's still an indie game that I could see myself playing, and that's a good sign. It seems like Project Moon is really taking this project serious and looking through player feedback to create a game that fits their artistic design as well as being a game that people can enjoy playing, whether or not that they were fans in the first place of the previous game. I look forward to seeing what this game looks like in future updates, and on that note, I'm the hell out of here. I'll catch you guys later, most likely in part 5 of my Library of Ruina Let's Play, so I'll see you there. Peace and chicken grease.